On the distant planet of Zyphora, the sky shimmered with 1,000 colors. Its floating cities drifted gracefully above forests that glowed softly in the night. Towers of crystal and metal reflected the light, creating a city that seemed alive. People from all corners of the galaxy came here to witness one of the most feared events in the universe, the Ritual of the Thousand Blades, a tournament where the planet's princess would test her suitors in combat. Princess Lyra, only 20 years old, was already legendary. She had killed 500 suitors in the arena. Each duel was a test, and failure meant death. Some said she was cruel. Others whispered that the princess was simply protecting her people from weak rulers. Lyra herself had grown cold and disciplined, trusting no one, carrying the weight of her people's expectations and the history of her ancestors. The crowd in the grand arena was enormous. Species of all shapes and sizes filled the stands. Some had long, flexible limbs, some had wings, and some were covered in scales that shimmered like gems. They had come to see the spectacle, the thrill of combat, and the glory of witnessing a suitor fight for survival against the deadly princess. In a quiet corner of the arena, far from the cheering crowd, Captain Nathan Hale stepped down from his spacecraft. He was human from Earth, a planet long considered weak and primitive by most galactic civilizations. Nathan was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that reflected calm and confidence. He carried only a simple weapon and a small pack. Most who saw him laughed quietly. A human. "He will be gone before the first bell," muttered a Zorvian warrior nearby, his four arms crossing in disdain. Nathan didn't speak much. He had traveled across galaxies to reach this moment, not for glory, but to prove that humans were underestimated. His ship had crashed on a barren planet days earlier, leaving him exhausted and hungry. Yet here he stood in the grand arena of Zyphora, ready to face the deadliest princess in the universe. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Welcome, beings of the galaxy. Today begins the trial of the Thousand Blades. Let the suitors enter." Doors opened at the far end of the arena. Aliens of every kind entered, displaying incredible weapons and powers. Some wielded plasma swords, others had blades of crystal sharper than any human could imagine. Nathan walked calmly, unarmed for now, drawing curious and mocking glances. He did not flinch. His eyes scanned the arena, noticing every detail: the uneven ground, the position of the gates, the crowd's attention, and the movements of the princess. Lyra appeared on her high platform, her armor glinting in the sunlight. Her eyes were sharp, cold, and calculating. She studied each suitor as they entered. Some trembled, some tried to appear brave but failed. And then she saw the human. He did not look like a threat. His movements were calm, simple, but his eyes, they held a quiet confidence. The first duel began with a Zorvian warrior. Lyra's blade flashed. The audience gasped as the warrior fell in seconds. Another duel started, a Mantari fighter, quick and agile. Lyra adjusted her strategy, but again she won effortlessly. Blood and sparks flew in the arena. The human observed silently, noting her speed, precision, and patterns. Finally, it was Nathan's turn. The doors opened and he stepped forward. The crowd laughed, whispers of disbelief echoing. "Humans are weak, he cannot survive 5 seconds." Lyra raised her blade. Nathan simply nodded. No fear, no arrogance, just calm focus. The arena fell silent, tension rising. The first moves were lightning fast. Lyra attacked with her usual precision. Nathan dodged in ways no one expected, not with strength, but with timing, positioning, and observation. He moved with human ingenuity, using the arena's terrain to avoid deadly strikes. The crowd gasped again. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. No suitor had ever survived more than a few moments. Yet here, a human moved with skill, thinking faster than the average alien fighter. Sparks flew from clashing weapons. Nathan blocked and parried, not with brute force but with clever anticipation. Minutes passed, though it felt like seconds. Nathan dodged a spinning strike, rolled across the sand, and used the arena walls to leap out of reach. Lyra adapted, striking harder and faster. Yet Nathan anticipated her pattern, noticing subtle shifts in her stance, timing his movements to exploit them. Finally, the duel ended. Nathan had not defeated Lyra, but he had survived the round. The crowd erupted in a mix of shock, awe, and disbelief. No human had ever lasted this long. Lyra's hand did not lower her blade, she was still ready, but her eyes showed something new, interest. Nathan bowed respectfully, acknowledging her skill. "You are remarkable," he said simply. His voice carried through the arena. Lyra studied him silently, trying to read the human mind, something she had never had to do before. The announcer's voice echoed again. "A new challenger rises. The human has survived the deadly first round." Cheers and murmurs rippled through the audience. Some aliens were angry, others curious. For the first time, they wondered if humans could be more than they thought. Later, in the corridors behind the arena, Lyra reflected on the human suitor. She had fought hundreds, expecting the same fear, the same mistakes. But Nathan had done something different. He had observed, adapted, and survived. Not through raw power, but through intelligence and calm courage. Nathan, meanwhile, walked through the city quietly. He studied the floating towers, the alien markets, and the glowing forests. He had come to prove humans were underestimated, and surviving the first round was just the beginning. He knew the next challenges would be tougher, that Lyra would not be defeated easily. But he felt confident. Humans had something the galaxy often ignored: creativity, resilience, and courage against all odds. As the sun set over Zyphora, the arena glowed with golden light. Lyra watched Nathan from her tower, curiosity replacing her usual coldness. The next round would come soon. And for the first time in centuries, the princess felt a flicker of uncertainty. Could a human be worthy? The night passed with whispers across the city. Aliens debated, merchants speculated, and warriors prepared for the next round. Nathan trained quietly, studying combat patterns, refining his strategy, and resting for what was coming. The stage was set. The legendary princess and the underestimated human had begun a journey that would challenge traditions, test limits, and perhaps change the galaxy forever. And the crowd did not know it yet, but this tournament would never be the same again. The morning sun of Zyphora rose slowly, spilling golden light across the floating city. The arena, which had already witnessed countless battles, now prepared for the next round of the deadly tournament. The streets buzzed with excitement, and aliens from across the galaxy crowded into markets, taverns, and viewing platforms. Everyone spoke of one thing: the human suitor, Nathan Hale, who had survived the first duel against Princess Lyra. For centuries, the ritual of the 1,000 blades had been a spectacle of power and skill. No human had ever entered the arena, let alone survived a single duel. Yet Nathan had done the impossible. Whispers followed him everywhere. How did he survive? He must be clever or lucky. No human can be this strong. But luck alone would not carry Nathan forward. He knew the next battles would test every ounce of his skill, mind, and courage. Princess Lyra watched him from her high tower, her usual calm replaced by curiosity. For the first time, she felt the faint stirrings of interest rather than contempt. Most suitors approached with arrogance or fear. Nathan approached with quiet focus. He did not underestimate her, but he also did not tremble in front of the deadly princess. That balance, she realized, was unusual. The doors of the arena opened once again, and new challengers entered. They were a mixture of warriors from different galaxies, some heavily armored, some agile and fast, and some with strange abilities that defied human understanding. Among them was Zarvik, a four-armed fighter from the planet Krelta, known for his speed and deadly bladed gauntlets. Another was Mira, a winged warrior whose talons could slice through stone. The audience roared, eager to see who would survive and who would fall. Nathan stood silently, observing the patterns of the previous battles. He noticed that Lyra's attacks followed a rhythm, a sequence that many suitors failed to recognize. Her strategy relied on intimidation, speed, and overwhelming force. Nathan knew brute strength alone would not work. He would need to think, adapt, and use every advantage the arena could offer. The first duel of the round began. Zarvik lunged at Lyra, spinning in the air with his four blades. Lyra parried, her movements precise and deadly. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed, and the audience gasped at every strike. But Nathan noticed something. Zarvik relied on speed, not strategy. Lyra, noticing his overconfidence, struck with a sudden and perfectly timed attack. Zarvik fell, defeated, and the crowd cheered. Next, Mira entered the arena, her wings spreading wide. She swooped down from above, her talons aiming straight for Lyra. Most suitors would panic at such a sudden assault, but Nathan analyzed the attack from his position. He saw the timing, the angles, and the possible openings. He remained calm, studying Lyra's defensive movements as she blocked Mira's strikes. In a flash, Lyra adapted and countered, forcing Mira into retreat. The audience was on the edge of their seats. Finally, it was Nathan's turn. The doors opened and he stepped forward again. The crowd erupted, some in disbelief, others in excitement. "The human returns," shouted a commentator from a floating platform. Nathan did not raise his voice or show fear. He simply nodded toward Lyra, acknowledging her skill. The duel began immediately. Lyra attacked with the force and speed of a seasoned warrior. Nathan dodged, blocked, and parried with clever timing. Each movement was calculated. He used his surroundings, the uneven sand, the walls, and even the floating debris in the arena, to his advantage. The audience watched in shock as a human matched the deadly princess in combat. Lyra's strikes were faster and more precise than anything Nathan had faced before. She was relentless, but humans had a strength that aliens often underestimated: creativity and adaptability. Nathan did not attempt to overpower her. Instead, he forced her to adapt to him. He moved unpredictably, feinting one direction and then taking another, forcing Lyra to second-guess her attacks. The duel continued for what felt like hours. Sweat and dust covered both fighters, but neither gave way. Nathan's focus never wavered. Each time Lyra attacked, he analyzed her stance, her rhythm, and her intentions. Each time she adjusted, he countered with clever maneuvers that kept him alive. The audience began to shift their perception of humans. "He is clever," whispered an alien spectator. No brute force, only mind and strategy. Even Lyra felt a strange respect for Nathan. He was not just surviving, he was learning, adapting, and challenging her in ways no suitor ever had. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the royal court buzzed with tension. Some advisors were furious that a human had survived. They saw it as a threat to tradition, a disruption to centuries of customs. Others were quietly impressed, recognizing that Nathan's intelligence and courage were qualities that even the princess could respect. Discussions of strategy, politics, and alliances filled the council halls. As the duel progressed, Nathan noticed something else. Lyra was testing him, not just his skill but his values. She made attacks that could have ended him immediately, but chose to gauge his reactions instead. Nathan realized that to survive and earn respect, he would need more than skill. He would need honor and courage. He saw an opening and seized it, not with lethal force, but with a clever maneuver that forced Lyra to pause. He had not defeated her, but he had shown that he was not afraid and not reckless. The audience erupted into cheers and murmurs. Many began to root for the human, fascinated by his ingenuity and courage. By the end of the duel, Nathan had survived again. He did not win, but he had proven something far greater than victory. He had shown that humans could match the galaxy's finest in intelligence, strategy, and resilience. Lyra, for her part, lowered her blade slightly, a small gesture but one that carried weight. Respect was forming where there had only been challenge before. After the duel, Nathan walked through the arena quietly. He was exhausted, but his mind was sharp. He knew the next rounds would be harder. Lyra was not only a skilled warrior, but she was learning from him as well. Each move he made, each strategy he used would be countered in the future. The true test was only beginning. Lyra returned to her tower, reflecting on the human before her. For centuries, no suitor had challenged her in this way. Most feared her, some underestimated her, and others failed miserably. Nathan was different. He did not fear her. He did not show arrogance. He was clever, patient, and unexpected. These qualities, she realized, were exactly what made a worthy challenger, and perhaps even a worthy ally. The night fell over Zyphora, painting the city in shades of violet and gold. Markets closed, citizens returned to their homes, and the arena was cleaned and prepared for the next day. Nathan trained quietly, reviewing his moves, thinking ahead to what Lyra might try next. He studied every detail of the arena, every shift in the ground, and every possible advantage he could use. He knew he had survived, but he could not afford to become complacent. Meanwhile, in the royal court, advisors debated fiercely. "We cannot allow this human to continue," said one elder. "It would dishonor tradition. He is clever, courageous. Maybe humans are stronger than we thought." The court was divided, and uncertainty began to creep into long-held customs. Back in the city, the alien crowd discussed Nathan endlessly. Some cheered for the human, inspired by his courage and intelligence. Others doubted that he could survive another round. Yet even those who doubted could not ignore the truth. He had changed the perception of humans in the galaxy. For Nathan, it was not glory he sought. It was proof. Proof that humans were not weak, that courage and intelligence could overcome strength and tradition. As he rested that night, he felt a quiet confidence. He had survived, yes, but he had also earned respect, and that was far more valuable. The story of the human in the arena spread quickly. Across Zyphora, across markets, floating cities, and distant planets, beings whispered about the Earthling who had survived the deadly princess. The galaxy had begun to notice humans. And somewhere high above the arena, Princess Lyra watched the stars, thinking about the human who had challenged her. For the first time, she felt uncertainty mixed with fascination. Who was this human, and could he truly be worthy? The next round would answer that, and it would test Nathan's skill, courage, and ingenuity like never before. The stage was set. The tension between human and princess, tradition and change, strength and strategy was only beginning. The next battles would be more dangerous, more clever, and more thrilling. And the galaxy would watch with bated breath, wondering, could a human really survive the deadly ritual of the thousand blades? The next morning on Zyphora dawned cold and quiet. The floating city seemed to hold its breath, as if it too knew that something extraordinary was about to happen in the arena. News of Captain Nathan Hale, the human who had survived 2 rounds against Princess Lyra, had spread throughout the city and beyond. Alien merchants whispered of his clever maneuvers, warriors debated his tactics, and even children mimicked his movements in play. Nathan was no longer just a competitor. He had become a symbol of human ingenuity and courage. Princess Lyra watched him from her high tower, her eyes sharp and thoughtful. She had faced hundreds of suitors, but Nathan was different. He was not just brave. He was clever, patient, and adaptable. Unlike the others, he did not attack recklessly or fear death. Instead, he studied, analyzed, and turned every moment of danger into an opportunity. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt uncertain. Could a human truly match her skill? Could he survive the ultimate duel she had prepared? The arena doors opened, and the next round of combat began. This was the penultimate round, where only the strongest suitors remained. Nathan stepped forward, his body tense but his mind calm. He had no desire to impress anyone. He only wanted to survive, to prove that humans were more than the galaxy believed. The crowd cheered, some in excitement, some in disbelief, but Nathan's focus was unshakable. His first opponent was a massive alien warrior named Threx, whose thick armor made him nearly unstoppable. Threx charged at Nathan, swinging a heavy hammer that could crush stone. Most suitors would have panicked, trying to meet strength with strength, but Nathan was different. He studied the arena floor and noticed the sand was loose in places, with sharp stones scattered near the edges. Using his environment, Nathan dodged each blow, forcing Threx to stumble repeatedly. With careful timing, Nathan used Threx's momentum against him, causing the alien to trip over a stone and crash to the ground. The crowd gasped in amazement. No human had ever defeated Threx, yet Nathan had done it without brute force, relying only on strategy and clever thinking. Threx roared in frustration, not at being overpowered but at being outsmarted. Nathan did not gloat. He offered Threx a hand to rise, earning grudging respect even from his defeated opponent. The next battle was even more dangerous. Mura, a fast and agile alien with wings, swooped down from above, her talons flashing like knives. Nathan observed her flight pattern and noticed a slight delay in her attack sequence. Using this small opening, he timed his dodges perfectly, allowing Mura to overshoot her strikes. Then, with a quick move, Nathan caused her to land awkwardly, forcing her to retreat. The crowd erupted, realizing that Nathan's mind was as deadly as any weapon. Finally, it came to the duel that would decide the ultimate challenger, Nathan versus Princess Lyra. The arena was tense. Every eye was on them. Some whispered that this human could survive the impossible. Others doubted it. But Lyra's gaze was unreadable, her thoughts hidden behind a mask of concentration. She had faced hundreds of suitors, but none had challenged her mind the way Nathan had. The duel began with a flurry of movement. Lyra's strikes were precise, fast, and deadly. Nathan moved with calculated steps, dodging and parrying with skill. Every attack from Lyra tested him, every feint forced him to think quickly. The arena echoed with the sound of clashing blades, sparks flying in the golden morning light. Nathan realized something crucial. Lyra was not only testing his skill, she was testing his judgment and honor. Several times he had openings to strike lethally, but he held back, choosing instead to focus on defense and clever maneuvers. Lyra's strikes became sharper, her movements faster, but Nathan's calm observation allowed him to stay one step ahead. Minutes passed, but it felt like hours. Sweat ran down Nathan's face, his muscles ached, and every fiber of his body demanded rest. Yet he could not stop. He had learned that humans were not the strongest, but they were resilient and creative under pressure. He used his mind to anticipate every attack, exploiting the tiniest mistakes and forcing Lyra to adapt continuously. The crowd was on edge. Many were amazed, cheering for the human, while others murmured in disbelief. "He cannot survive this," one alien whispered. "He is clever, but still human." Yet Nathan's movements proved that strategy could rival strength. At a critical moment, Lyra attempted a high-speed spinning strike that would have ended most suitors. Nathan leapt over the attack, landing just behind her, and pointed his blade toward her side, not to harm her but to show he had the opportunity. Lyra froze, surprised. No suitor had dared challenge her in such a way. Nathan's action demonstrated not arrogance, but intelligence, courage, and respect. For the first time, Lyra smiled faintly. She realized that Nathan was more than just a survivor. He was a worthy opponent who could think, act, and respond in ways no one else could. The duel shifted. It was no longer a fight for survival alone. It had become a battle of wits, of observation, and of respect. Nathan saw an opening. Instead of striking, he used his momentum to force Lyra back, testing her reaction. She adjusted instantly, parrying and countering with incredible skill. But Nathan's adaptability continued to surprise her. He was human, yes, but his courage, creativity, and calm under pressure made him a unique challenge. The crowd gasped again. They watched as a human matched the deadly princess in intelligence and skill. Some began to cheer for Nathan, others for Lyra, but all were captivated. The arena had never witnessed such a duel. Sparks flew from clashing weapons, sand kicked up in clouds, and every movement demanded attention. Finally, Nathan made a clever move. Instead of trying to win by striking Lyra, he forced her into a position where she had to acknowledge his skill. He had survived, yes, but more importantly, he had earned respect through honor and intelligence. Lyra paused, lowering her blade slightly, a gesture that shocked the audience. Nathan breathed heavily, sweat and dust covering his face. He did not celebrate, did not boast. He had survived again, and in doing so, he had proven something far greater. Humans could match the galaxy's best not by brute force, but by mind, heart, and courage. The royal court was in chaos. Some advisors were furious that a human had survived this far, fearing that traditions and customs were being challenged. Others quietly admired Nathan, recognizing that his intelligence and honor were qualities even the princess could respect. Debates raged about what this meant for the future of Zyphora, for the tournament, and for humanity's place in the galaxy. Lyra herself felt a strange mixture of admiration and curiosity. She had fought hundreds of suitors, but Nathan was the first who did not simply react to her attacks. He learned from her, adapted, and even tested her in return. He was clever, patient, and brave, qualities she had never truly respected in anyone before. As night fell over the arena, Nathan rested, thinking about what had just happened. He had survived the ultimate tests, not by overpowering his opponents, but by using intelligence, courage, and observation. The HFY principle, human ingenuity and bravery, had shone brightly in the face of impossible odds. Lyra stood on her tower, looking at Nathan in the distance. For the first time, she felt uncertainty mixed with fascination. Could this human truly be worthy? Could he survive the final duel? She realized that her perception of humans had begun to change. They were not weak, as most in the galaxy believed. They were clever, resilient, and capable of surprising strength in ways no one expected. The stage was set for the final round. The tension between human and princess, between tradition and change, and between strength and strategy had reached its peak. The audience buzzed with anticipation. Everyone knew that tomorrow, the final duel would test skill, courage, and the limits of human ingenuity. Nathan walked through the quiet streets of Zyphora that night, reflecting on everything he had learned. He knew the final duel would not be easy, but he was ready. Humans might not be the strongest species in the galaxy, but they had something that no weapon could match: mind, heart, and courage in the face of overwhelming odds. The duel between human and princess was not just a fight, it was a test of humanity itself. And tomorrow, the galaxy would witness the moment when a human could either triumph or fall in the ultimate challenge. The arena of Zyphora glimmered in the early morning light. Thousands of spectators from across the galaxy filled the floating stands. They whispered in excitement, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Today was the final duel of the Ritual of the Thousand Blades. All eyes were on Captain Nathan Hale, the human who had survived 2 previous rounds against the deadly Princess Lyra. For centuries, no human had ever entered the arena, let alone survived past the first duel. Nathan's presence had already caused a stir throughout the galaxy. Alien races debated his abilities. Some laughed at the idea of a human being worthy of the princess. Others watched in awe, curious to see how far a human could go. Nathan, however, ignored all the noise. He focused only on the duel ahead. His goal was not glory or fame. It was to prove that humans were more than underestimated beings. Princess Lyra descended from her high tower, her armor gleaming under the sun. She carried herself with grace and deadly precision. Her eyes, which had grown accustomed to seeing suitors fall in fear or arrogance, now held something different: curiosity and respect. Nathan had survived, yes, but he had done it by intelligence and courage, not by raw strength. Lyra had never faced such a worthy challenge. The crowd fell silent as the duel began. The gates closed behind Nathan, and the tension became almost unbearable. Lyra struck first, her movements a blur of speed and deadly intent. Nathan responded with calculated defense, parrying her attacks with careful timing. He moved not with raw power but with clever anticipation, using the arena itself to his advantage. Each strike, each parry, tested Nathan's focus. The princess was relentless. She had faced hundreds of warriors, but Nathan's strategy and ingenuity were unlike anything she had encountered. He dodged her spinning strikes, avoided her lunges, and even used small obstacles in the arena to create openings. The crowd gasped repeatedly. A human matching the deadly princess in skill was unprecedented. Many spectators had begun to cheer for Nathan, inspired by his courage and intelligence. Others watched in awe, realizing that strength alone did not always determine the outcome of battle. Nathan noticed a pattern in Lyra's attacks. Her rhythm, though fast and precise, had a subtle repetition. He waited for the perfect moment. Then, instead of striking immediately, he used misdirection. He feinted a move to the left, drawing Lyra's attack, and then rolled to the right, positioning himself advantageously. Lyra paused, momentarily surprised. No suitor had ever used such clever tactics against her. The duel escalated. Lyra's strikes became faster, more unpredictable. Nathan's body ached, sweat ran down his face, and his muscles screamed for rest. Yet he remained calm. Humans were not the strongest, but they had something the galaxy often underestimated: resilience, intelligence, and creativity under pressure. He used these qualities to stay alive and continue challenging the princess. At a critical moment, Lyra attempted a spinning strike that would have ended almost any other suitor. Nathan leapt over the attack, landing behind her. For a brief second, he had the opportunity to strike decisively, but he did not. Instead, he lowered his weapon slightly, showing restraint and respect. Lyra froze, her eyes widening. No one had ever dared to show such honor while in the midst of combat. The crowd fell silent. They sensed something extraordinary was happening. Nathan's move was not weakness. It was strategy, courage, and intelligence combined. He had forced Lyra to recognize him as a worthy opponent, not just a human to be tested and defeated. Lyra's own movements changed. She attacked with precision, but there was now caution in her strikes. She realized that Nathan was not merely surviving. He was adapting, learning, and challenging her mind as much as her skill. This was a turning point. The duel was no longer just a fight. It had become a contest of intellect, courage, and respect. Nathan seized another opportunity. Using the arena itself, he forced Lyra to take a step back, testing her reaction. She countered, yet there was a subtle admiration in her eyes. She had faced hundreds of suitors who failed because they relied on strength, fear, or arrogance. Nathan relied on observation, strategy, and courage, proving that humans had qualities worth respect in any corner of the galaxy. Minutes passed, though it felt like hours. Sparks flew from clashing weapons, sand and dust swirled in clouds, and the crowd held its breath with every movement. Nathan's endurance, quick thinking, and unshakable focus allowed him to match the princess at every turn. Then came the decisive moment. Lyra attempted a high-speed spinning attack, expecting Nathan to falter. But Nathan had anticipated it. He sidestepped, allowed her momentum to carry her forward, and then used his agility to counterbalance her. He disarmed her temporarily, not with strength but with clever use of her movement and the arena. Lyra froze. Nathan did not strike. Instead, he stepped back, lowering his weapon completely. He had won not by defeating her through violence, but by demonstrating skill, courage, and respect. The crowd erupted in a mixture of awe and applause. Aliens and spectators from distant planets whispered in disbelief. A human had not only survived the ultimate duel, but had also earned the respect of the most feared princess in the galaxy. Princess Lyra stood silently for a moment, studying Nathan. Then she raised her hand and nodded, a gesture that held more meaning than words. She acknowledged his strength, intelligence, and honor. For centuries, she had killed hundreds of suitors, but here was a human who had changed her perception entirely. The arena was filled with cheers and applause. Nathan lowered his weapon, acknowledging the crowd with quiet humility. He had not sought glory, only to prove a point. Humans could match the galaxy's best in courage, intelligence, and resilience. Back in the royal court, advisors whispered furiously. Some feared that the tradition of the 1,000 blades had been broken. Others realized that this human had shown qualities even their princess could respect. The political landscape of Zyphora was shifting, and humanity's reputation in the galaxy was changing forever. Lyra walked down from her tower to meet Nathan in the center of the arena. "You have surprised me," she said simply, her voice calm yet carrying weight. "Most suitors relied on fear or strength. You relied on intelligence, courage, and respect. That is rare." Nathan nodded. "I only wanted to show that humans can be more than they are believed to be. We adapt, we endure, and we think. That is our strength." Lyra smiled faintly, a rare expression on her usually serious face. "Perhaps humans are not as weak as the galaxy believes. You have proven that today." From that day forward, Nathan's name spread across Zyphora and beyond. Humans were no longer seen as weak or insignificant. They were clever, brave, and capable of incredible feats when challenged. Nathan had shown the HFY truth. Intelligence, courage, and ingenuity could triumph where brute strength alone could not. The arena, which had once been a place of fear and death, now stood as a symbol of respect and honor. Princess Lyra and Nathan had not only changed the rules of the tournament, they had changed perceptions. For centuries, humans had been underestimated. Now they were worthy of admiration in the galaxy. As the sun set over the floating city, Nathan looked at the horizon. He had survived impossible odds, earned respect, and proven that humans could face the deadliest challenges without fear. Lyra stood beside him, no longer just a princess, but a witness to the courage and ingenuity of a human. The galaxy would remember this day. Nathan Hale, the human who entered the arena and survived the deadly Princess Lyra, had changed the course of history. Humans were no longer underestimated. They were respected, admired, and feared for their intelligence and courage. And somewhere in the distance, whispers spread across the stars. A human had challenged the most dangerous warrior in the galaxy and survived. The legend of Nathan Hale and Princess Lyra had only just begun. The tournament was over, but the story of human ingenuity and courage would echo across galaxies for generations. The alien princess killed 500 suitors in ritual combat, until a human entered the arena.